This is chapter 16 of The Car. How old is he? It was evening and Samuel was still sleeping in the chair. Waylon had found a blanket in the trailer and covered the old man, tucking him in carefully. Then the three of them had made a fire pit and located their bedrolls near it. Made a fire, helped Wayne put up the tent, although it didn't look like at all like rain. The sky was clear and the stars seemed so close they could be touched. They had eaten spaghetti and were lying around the fire, propped up on elbows, and Terry was looking to the recliner where Samuel hadn't moved. Nobody knows. He was old when we came here, before, 20 years ago. 100, 110, 20. He's past counting. Waylon took a long pull of his coffee. Past aging. He'll just be that way now until he's gone. Terry stared at Samuel. It was dark, but in the light from the fire, the recliner and the man looked yellow. He looks gone now. Wayne nodded. Right, but he's not. He'll come up and start talking again. You want to be listening when it comes. Has he been here all the time? Yeah. Some say he's an Indian, but I heard he punched cows for a while back when. Nobody is sure how he started, just how he is now. Back in the 60s, 70s, must have been hundreds, maybe thousands of people came past, talking to him, listening to him. Samuel coughed, and the three became silent, listening, but he didn't say anything further. Waylon used the silence to lay back, and Terry did the same. He pulled his bag up around his shoulders to keep the cool air out, positioned his windbreaker under his head, and lay looking up. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the cat and baby sitting near each other, the starlight gleaming on the chrome, and he tried to remember his other life. How much time had passed? It simply didn't come. He remembered his parents, that he had parents, but how they looked was fuzzy. He could remember his house, his room better, and he realized with a start that it had only been 6-7 days since he'd gone. Since he'd met Waylon in the rain. And here he was, on the prairie, listening to an old man camped with a couple of holdovers from the 60s, learning about a world he didn't know existed. Life, he thought. Life rolls funny if you don't watch it. He closed his eyes and was asleep before he thought another word. Voted for the son of a bitch and he let us down. Terry wasn't sure how long he had slept, but it was still dark when the voice brought him up. He opened his eyes and rolled over. The fire was well out, the ashes cold, and the sound was coming from Samuel. Terry unzipped the bag and wrapped it around his shoulders and stood, saw that Waylon was up and doing the same. Though Wayne was still asleep and moved to Samuel's side, where they sat against the trailer, bundled in their bags. Who? Terry asked, but Waylon held a hand on his shoulder and pressed him into quiet. You don't have to ask, Waylon whispered. Just let him talk. There were dreams everywhere, so many dreams you couldn't count them, and Hoover got in and they all went to hell. He took a breath. Terry thought it must be 3 or 4 in the morning. He didn't have a watch. He had one flash of thought. I'm sitting in the middle of the night listening to this. But it trailed off and Samuel started again. People died, jumped from buildings and died because of money. Farms died. People went for food, wanted food, and starved. And then the droughts came. Droughts and dust. Dust in your lungs. Dust in the cracks of your eyes. Dust for air. Dust for food. Dust for death. He stopped again, and Waylon leaned over to whisper, "The Depression. He's talking about the Depression." "What?" "A bad time, back in the 30s, when corrupt politicians bled the country dry and a big drought came. Same as the 80s with Reagan. Women marrying in dust, living in dust, loving in dust, burying their babies in dust. The sky gone in dust, the sun gone in dust." And Samuel stopped again, breathing deeply. Waylon sat silently, thinking, and Terry looked out at the dark sky, trying to see the horizon, and tried to envision what it must have been like 60 years earlier. Once a teacher had talked of the Depression, but he had just said they were long lines at soup kitchens in something called the Dust Bowl. Somehow it didn't seem like it happened to people, until now. Now it seemed real. Something in the way Samuel talked, the way his voice worked, made it seem real. The dust, the people, the babies crying, all real. "He's asleep again," Waylon said. "I'm not sure for how long. We'll just stay next to him and wait until he wakes up." They sat the rest of the night, leaning against the trailer next to the recliner, sleeping. And that's the way Wayne found them in the morning, still dozing, with Samuel sound asleep between them, and indeed Samuel did not awaken until nearly noon. And that's the end of chapter 16.